Time is already ticking, and I am Kevin. I lead the marketing team at Common Room. I've got 30 slides and 15 minutes, so 30 seconds per slide. I got to go pretty fast. And I live my life on like 2x speed, so hopefully I don't, confuse people. Okay, first slide. Great. Okay, now that that's through. Okay, so this is what I like to call the NASCAR slide of doom. So there's a bunch of headwinds for us in go-to-market. The predictable revenue playbook is no longer effective. According to Gartner, apparently 75% of people don't want to talk to sales or anyone. Efficiency is at an all-time low, yet efficiency is what's being rewarded by VCs. Sasser says that only 18% of people are hitting their revenue targets, and then there's like layoffs that abound. So it's pretty dreary out there for us as marketers and go-to-market teams. And I feel like this sums up the expectations for VCs, from VCs and CEOs. My CEO, Linda, is here. She's saying, Kevin, you need to do more with less. How many people are feeling this way out there right now? Good amount of hands there. Nice. Okay, and so one way, not the only way, but I think a very effective way that we can do more with less is using signals or taking a signal-based approach to go to market. So what do I mean by that? I tried to define it because there's lots of different definitions out there of what signals mean. So what I mean is capturing buying signals to identify who's in market and then using those signals to inform your go-to-market strategy by taking actions with context from bespoke signals. So I feel like this gets us to part of the holy grail of where I would always want to go as a marketer is reaching the right person with the right message at the right time. Okay, so Emily Kramer shared a framework. This is one of my favorite frameworks, and this helps us orient around like why signals work. So I like to call it marketing is easy, and not to say that marketing is easy, but if you distill marketing down to its essence, it's really just two circles of a Venn diagram. One circle is your audience, and the other circle is your offer. And the closer overlap you have between these two things, the more effective your marketing is. One personal example that I like to share is that my wife recently had an excruciating toothache, and this was past hours of the dentist. It was like 10 o'clock at night, and so we frantically Googled like, where can you find a 24-hour emergency dentist? That Google search showed up as this place in Oakland. We called, booked time, and immediately went there. Paid a lot, but in that instance, we were the audience, like someone who has a toothache after hours, and then this dentist place was the hero for us. And so I feel like that is a good example of like perfect audience to offer overlap. And obviously, we acted very fast. So signals help us do kind of the same thing. And they help us define who the audience is and then help us also inform our offer. I'm not going to go through every single one of these for time, but the first example here is one that's illustrative. So say our signal is someone on LinkedIn or a prospect of ours connected with a competitor sales rep on LinkedIn. So that's the signal that defines the audience. And within our audience, we want to make sure that that signal is also coming from a person who we can sell to. And then our offer can be connected to that too. So our offer could be, send that person, one, connect with them, and then two, send them a story around, why a customer of yours chose your product over the competition. So this is kind of like a nice framework for saying like, okay, here's the signal that helps define the audience and then also informs the offer. Cool, so this is the part where we get a little bit more tactical, and there's lots of spreadsheets and things like that. I'm a fan of spreadsheets, so let's get into how to select the right signals and how to prioritize the right signals. Okay, so the number one question I get around signals is, what signal should we start with? There's going to be a lot of slides like this with this URL, so don't worry about not capturing it, but I created this resource that lays out 100 different signals, and I feel like the starting point for where to decide where to start is to look at the whole spectrum of signals and then to start to narrow from there. So you can download this at this URL, tinyurl/BTB/signal, and then from here we'll start to narrow down. So within that same spreadsheet, you can also filter by type of signal. Type of signal being, a product signal, a website activity signal, signal from the dark funnel. And this is a nice way of like grouping all the different signals to consider together. And when you do that, it helps to really narrow down the signals that you can execute on. So if you're not a PLG company, for example, you could just scrap all the product-led signals and just be like, okay, this is not something that we want to take action on. And so if you go to the next tab on this resource, I thought the resource, it's no big deal. If you go to the next tab on the resource, you'll be able to filter by signals by type, and then also select the different signals that apply to your specific use case. And so here you can select the applicable signals, and then the next thing that we want to do is map these signals by 2 different dimensions. And this is actually really important. So the first is propensity score, and that is what is the likelihood that actioning the signal will lead to some sort of outcome, like a demo request or a conversion to pipeline. This can be from just straight up conversion rates if you have historical conversion rates, but it also can just be on a scale of 1 to 10 of what your best intuition is. And then the next dimension is volume. So you want to say like, how often do these signals happen within any given sort of time? And then you can also have some sort of similar scale of, frequency of that signal, if you can track that historically, or just your best estimate for where to rank that on a scale of 1 to 10. Okay, this is where things get a little bit more nerdy and fun, is that if you map all of your signals onto this chart, if you chart them out, you'll find that signals with high intent typically have a lower frequency. So on the far end of the spectrum here on the right, you'll see demo requests, and demo requests have super high intent, but also have pretty low volume. And then on the far left, we have cold outbound, right? It's like initially infinite amount of scale, but very, very low conversion. And what's interesting about this is that you want to start in this golden area here, because this is the area where there's like enough signal to make it worth your go-to-market team's time to take action on it, but also not like light enough signal to where it's like not worth your time. And one other interesting thing here is that on the far right, the colors aren't the best from PowerPoint, but the far right here is grayed out, and that's because like the demo requests and the super hand raisers are typically already handled by marketing and by automation. And typically for those, you don't really need to do much personalization or put much effort into it. It's more just like, hey, take my calendar and like book a meeting. So that's why I typically start with like this kind of middle right cohort. Okay, still going back to this spreadsheet, you can then start to select all the signals that are applicable for your own use case. And then if you go to the tab on the right, you'll then have all your signals mapped into this visual graph. So the area that you want to start is in this upper right quadrant. Typically, you want to start there. So this is just a way of helping you prioritize and select which signals to start executing on. Okay, whew, I'm going fast. 5 minutes left. So then taking action on these signals. So like, let's get into that. This is where we get even more tactical. So, but first, there are some prerequisites that you want to have. One is the ability to capture the signal in the first place. The second is the ability to identify and enrich the person or account behind the signal, because we don't want to just reach out to every single person. That would be a waste of time. And then also the ability to take action. And what's nice about this actually is it may look a little complicated, but you can really get started with just an internet connection and a simple spreadsheet. So I like to take a crawl, walk, run approach to that. And here's an example of crawl. So there's this guy who's out there. His name's Chris Walker, and he puts out a lot of content, and that content gets a lot of traction. And so one way that you could start to crawl to take this execution-based approach is just look at this person's LinkedIn post, and then let's know that there's signal happening there. And then the next part is just scrolling through each of his comments and each of the reactions within his post to filter down from the who's in your ICP within this post. it sounds very tedious to do this manually, but I did it in 5 minutes and found about 15 or so people who fit our ICP at Common Room by just doing this manually. And then the last thing is just you need a way to email this person. So email or message or however, text message them if you want, if you can get their number. So if you're in a crawl stage, you can totally do all this without any kind of software or platform. It just is very tedious and not super scalable. So moving on to the walk phase, which is more automated signal capture and then taking the last mile actions. And we are, I'm using Common Room and I work there, so full disclosure. In all of these examples, I don't want to make this like a full-on pitch, but it is what it is. Okay, so signal capture. Same thought. Let's go to the next slide. Same thought. We are now using software to capture the signal that's happening on LinkedIn. There's a spicy post from Adam Robinson that we use to pull in all the people who are interacting with that post in the Common Room, and we're identifying and enriching them so that we know the right people to reach out to. And then the last, the final action, like the last mile action that our SDR and sales teams are taking is reviewing this list in like a burn down, refreshed daily list, and then putting them into a bespoke outreach sequence that uses the same, the context of the post. And then finally, for the run phase, which we're all trying to get to this nirvana of full-on automation, like do pipe gen in your sleep. So this is an example of a workflow with high confidence in the walk phase. You can kind of like let go of the training wheels and let automation do its thing. So here we're doing the same exact thing, looking at signal capture, identifying by tags of economic buyers and who fits our ideal customer persona, and then taking action all within one workflow. Okay, so let's quickly go through a case study of how this drives revenue. So this is a dog fooding case study from our own SDR team. Very similar use case. We are taking activity that's happening on LinkedIn, and then we're personalizing the outbound messages via outreach. Here's an example of that burn down list that our SDR team is using. And then what we're doing as a marketing team is helping them out with the last mile action by creating a bunch of, like a table of dynamic inserts that they can grab and pull into outreach. And we're doing this at first because we're still in the walk phase here, but we want to get to that run phase where we can let AI and automation just like take over by taking all the context of the signals that are happening and applying them to these outbound sequences. So we're getting there. We just need a little bit more confidence right now. But the results are that this compared to our ABM campaign, which is kind of like our control, is getting 100%, 120% more meetings booked. Another interesting thing about this is that the open rates, when we test that control to this variance, are only 10% higher. So what that tells me is that the context of what is in the body of the email is making someone take action in a more excited way. And then we're doing this for lots of forward-thinking customers. Tim here is someone who we talked about in the last session. Their team at Temporal is using signals to book 50% of their meetings, so pretty solid results there. And I made it under time. 46 seconds.